All right, everybody, what's up? What's happening? Hope everybody's having a good week. Christmas time last week. Hope everybody had a great Christmas, spent time with their families, and enjoyed the time off. We got New Year's coming up. So it's a very unbusy 2 weeks at work, probably for a lot of people, especially with how these things fall on Thursdays and Fridays, which is phenomenal, if you ask me. But yeah, so another playoff edition here. This time we got both of us playing this week, which is great. Didn't expect to be in a position to be talking about a game for on my side, anyways. So fantastic. So we're going chop it up very briefly on what happened a couple weeks ago, and then we'll dive into some other things going around the country, and then we'll talk about what we got going on New Year's Day. Last two SEC teams left standing. How we should have predicted that. Wouldn't have had it any different, right?
Yep.
But so Texas A&M Miami was the Saturday game. I thought that A&M. I picked A&M to go a lot further than they did, so they're screwing me big time in my brackets right now because I picked them in. Well, I picked them in one bracket. I picked Ohio State in the other bracket, so the buck stops at Miami. But yeah, I was very unimpressed with how A&M played. I think it was a continuation, it seemed like, of the Texas game. They did not look very explosive. They didn't look very opportunistic, how they had been all season. It looked very sluggish. Now, credit where credit is due. Miami played an outstanding game on defense. They were very tough up front. They, every yard was going to have to be earned. And, for them to go into that kind of environment, which I could imagine that none of those guys on that team had ever played in that type of atmosphere. So for them to rise to the occasion and play as well as they did, all credit to them. And Marcel Reed, who we talked about for weeks on end as being ultra progressive in his abilities this year and how good a passer he looked like he was and this and that and the other. Last probably 4 weeks, man, his passing ability has gone back to 2024 season. He looked like the Marcel Reed of old, and then, the turnover in the end zone to end their season, man. I mean, that's just heartbreaking if you're an Aggie. If you're an Aggie, that's the most disappointing 11-2 season on the planet. And I don't blame them one bit. I mean, you go 11-1 in the regular season and you get bounced in the first round by somebody that, on paper you should have beaten. But yeah, sucks for them, but only for them. So overall, we'll see how Miami does. But yeah, pretty disappointing from Texas A&M.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, to lose your last two games of the season when you jump out to an 11-0 start is going to always be disappointing. Certainly, I talked about this when we did our last show that I felt like Texas A&M was kind of being overlooked. Don't take that number next to their ranking as the be all end all for them. I certainly had them as a team circled. I didn't fill out a bracket, but I just felt like Texas A&M was more than capable of handling Miami. Just wasn't buying their stock, but like you said, credit to them. They played lights out defensively. And again, this was a home game for A&M, so you felt like the momentum was on their side. Great atmosphere. Love that for college football. But, the weather was a big element in that game. I mean, how many missed field goals do we have? I think it was like 4 or 5 at least.
Yeah, high winds. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that certainly played a tremendous factor in the game, because if you're able to move the ball down, but then you struggle in the red zone and then you're unable to capitalize and get at least 3 points, that's huge for momentum, and so that was definitely a problem for both sides. This was just a low scoring affair, great defensive battle, but yeah, I think, if you're A&M, you go, valiant effort, great season. I feel like they probably surpassed expectations from where we had them early on in the season. Elko's got the program moving in the right direction, but, coming down the stretch, Marcel Reed, too many poor decisions, too many mistakes. And then defensively, just kind of leaking oil a little bit. Whereas earlier in the season, they were just finding ways to win, especially in those higher scoring, games that we saw them play early in the season. So disappointing for sure, but yeah, on to next year for A&M.
Yeah, and I feel like, Texas probably exposed them pretty good, as far as what Miami's game plan was going to be when they got the draw. That'd have been the first game that I went and watched is, these guys walked in and just dominated these dudes and let's see where the openings, showed up. And then the first half of the South Carolina game, right? That'd have been pretty much the only two games that you could really get something out of. Maybe the Notre Dame game, because that was a pretty close game.
They
but
were able to score at will, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and other than that, Miami or A&M played pretty tight, throughout the whole year, so they were pretty, air shut. So, yeah, like I say, only sucks for them. So, we'll see you next year. But Alabama, Oklahoma, and Norman. We were celebrating your birthday for the first quarter of that game, and as we were walking out of the restaurant, and you guys had went upstairs, it's on somebody's speaker or whatever it was, and I could hear Chris Fowler calling the touchdown to make it 17-0, and I was just, I was livid. I'm like, this is how we show up, after just getting our ass handed to us in Atlanta. You've had 10 days off to figure this out, and this should be the team on the schedule right now that you want to beat more than anybody on this planet, is because you feel like you gave it away in Tuscaloosa, and that's who I wanted to play.
Yep.
The first quarter was atrocious. It was just bad. They struck fast, and we didn't have any answer for them. But I will say that was probably the most resilient performance that we've had all season by far. We got down in the Georgia game, didn't respond to that one at all. Got down in the Florida State game, didn't respond to that one. But this one, we go 17 down on the road in a playoff game this is for the whole thing. And you showed up and you put up 27 unanswered points, which was outstanding. And very surprising that they were able to pull that out. And the defense was, we talked about the defense, and I said that the defense was going to do everything that they could to make it happen. And they, after the first 17 points where we were allowing a lot of they were getting 15 yards of play, man, just over the middle, short throw stuff that was just right over the sticks, and it was there. We tightened it up, and the run game is still piss poor. However, Ty Simpson, he was pretty sharp in the second half of that game. I thought he hit some pretty key throws. The catch by Jeremy Bernard, the catch, no catch, whatever side you're on with that. But, that was a game changer, catching that ball and getting down the 5. And then, we have the motor to punch it in from the 5-yard line to put us up by 10 and put a stranglehold on the game. So it was great, man. Blocked a punt, did, all this stuff. And it was great. Or blocked a punt, I should say. That the guy dropped the punt. We picked up the fumble. But, it was awesome. Love to see it. Glad we got to get back. And, get back is MF on those sumbitches. So I was happy about it. So we'll see how it goes this week. But we'll get into that here shortly.
Yeah, certainly a big win for Alabama, team that, we didn't really give any chance of winning this game to when we were covering it. But yeah, this was more so a tale of two halves. What Oklahoma did efficiently in the first, being able to jump out to a big lead, and then just their inability to really do anything right in the second half. Now, granted, a lot of that has to do with the adjustments that were made defensively by Alabama. They were really able to shut down the run game, and then really render Mateer as being a very one-dimensional quarterback, which, we had kind of been seeing over the last half of the season, really ever since he came back from the injury. So very disappointing if you're an Oklahoma fan. And if you're Venables, you got to look yourself in the mirror and really figure out, how do you balance, right? How do you go from being only a defensive minded coach to also being able to efficiently put up points, be effective in the red zone, take advantage of those opportunities that are given to you, because that's ultimately what their Achilles heel is. It feels like there's a lot of similarities between Venables and Lincoln Riley, a guy that is really focused on the offensive side of the ball. His downfall has been defense. So, that's something that I feel like Oklahoma, if they want to get over the hump and climb that next step, that's what they're going to have to point to. I question whether or not Venables is ever going to be able to do that. Feels like at this point you pretty much know what you're getting with him. So and obviously at the beginning of the season we were talking about Mateer being a potential Heisman front runner. He certainly looked that way at the beginning of the year. Along the way, you have an injury. The wheels kind of fall off a little bit. So, but again, credit to Alabama, great second half. There were just things that you can't do. The interception, the pick six, was like one of the more egregious pick sixes I've ever seen in terms of just what were you thinking. I really am still stumped when I watch that play. Obviously, if you're an Alabama fan, you're going, thank you for the gift. Like that was I don't know if he just thought that was his guy or what, like just too quick of a throw, not really looking for his man, or he thought that that's where he was going to be. I don't know, but it was like, you put pads on us, we'll make that play. We may not have gone down and scored, but hey, we're going to at least catch that football. And then obviously you can't have special teams errors that are that critical. Again, you let a team get back into the game. It's like, well, you shoot yourself in the foot. What do you expect? So, it'll be interesting to see what Alabama does with that, momentum, that big win, kind of get back on track sort of win as they prepare for Indiana.
Yeah, and, it's kind of crazy is it's literally a reversal of how the first game went in Tuscaloosa. They had a pick six that you could pick and choose what was the difference in a 2-point game or whatever. They had a pick six. We missed a field goal. In that game, they missed 2 field goals, dropped the punt. Then they had the pick six, which was one of the more, like you say, egregious miscommunications on what route we're running. And, to be honest with you, even when he released the ball, the guy was clearly straight running downfield. So that decision was made pre-snap that's the throw that I'm hitting.
Yeah.
And, Xavier Brown, man, get that kid plays defensive back the way that we bitch about every week of how kids don't play defensive back nowadays, which is find the football and you'll make the play regardless of where the receiver is. He had a pick six with Tennessee, never looked at the receiver. He picked off Carson Beck last year in Tuscaloosa, never looked at the receiver, was finding the football the entire time. And that one, he never turned around and looked for the guy. He just was staring there waiting for a football to be released. And it's crazy that we sit here as like, why don't you just search for the ball and eventually somebody's going to be around you. And all 3 plays that he's made, that was literally what he never looked at anybody. So, credit to him, man. He's a great player. I'm glad we put him in the lineup and got him moving. He's one of our better guys. So, anyways, we capitalized on it. That was great. So, proud of him for that. But, we'll move on to the Indiana and Georgia Ole Miss picks. But before I do that, this is transfer season, right? This is getting into transfer portal season, and we just had early signing period and all that stuff. And Auburn hiring Alex Golish, which credit to Auburn, was a good hire. I'm glad they did not get John Summerall. That was who I was worried they were going to hire because I'd be more fearful of him than Golish. Golish is an also kind of more one-dimensional coach. He's all about offense. He was the offensive coordinator at Tennessee when they had Hendon Hooker, and that team put up 45 and a half a game or whatever their average was at the time. However, and they gave him a $30 million NIL budget that I saw. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if it was true because you got Tim Cook money, you got Yellowwood money, all that good stuff. But, dude, that guy's hemorrhaging talent like I have never seen before. I mean, when Saban left and DeBoer came in, we lost some very critical guys. Julian saying, Caleb Downs, lost a couple offensive linemen. We lost some defensive guys, but to the level that he's losing is his entire production from last year of that 5-7 team. And I don't know what he's going to be pulling from the transfer portal, the recruiting cycle, or the guys from USF.
Yeah.
Deuce Knight goes in today, and now you're relying on Byron Brown to come in and save you. But who's he throwing to? Cam Coleman's gone. Malcolm Simmons is gone. Perry Thompson is still there, but as the room empties, it's going to be like the Will Smith picture where he's kind of standing around going, what's up here, whatever. So pretty surprising. I don't know what he's going to do. It's getting pretty desperate down there though with how much talent he's losing. I mean, I don't know how he pulls it out.
Yeah, definitely shocking. I'm going to sound like a broken record just because we were talking about it right before we started recording. But, yeah, I don't know if these guys are just, tired of, where this program's been at since they've been at Auburn, just with the lack of being able to go out and compete on a consistent basis, dealing with Hugh Freeze's shit, and now he's gone, and now you're bringing in a new coach. I think for a lot of these guys that have high hopes when they go to a premier program like Auburn, now granted, I know some people may listen to that and go, premier, I don't know about that over the last few years, but you can argue whatever you want. Like Auburn is still a premier program. I mean, they've won, a national championship in the last 15 years. So I'd say that's still a premier program. And they're certainly able to, draw in a lot of talent. But when you kind of are in a free fall period over the last, 6, 7, 8 years now, a lot of guys in this day and age where it's just like about me, give me, I want all the gratification right here, right now. Guys can get tired of, kind of like going, hey, I'm sick of being irrelevant. I want to go play for a program that is making the playoffs, competing for national championships. So I feel like that may have a lot to do with it. Now, granted, Cam Coleman has been the guy for Auburn offensively over the last 2 seasons. So, again, I just don't know, like, if he's just tired of it, he's ready to go play for a program where, he can just have more eyes on him because you play more games at the end of the season if you're making the playoffs, right? Like, Auburn isn't even in a bowl game. So, I mean, it sucks for them. I hate it for their fan base because it makes you disinterested in your upcoming season when you're just, like you said, hemorrhaging talent. You see it just exiting the room. You're like, it's hard for me to get up as a fan and get excited about this upcoming season.
Well, yeah, and, I read this stuff on Twitter from the Auburn people like, get rid of this roster. It sucks. It's like, no, it doesn't. There's guys on that roster that would go to any other school and make a severe contribution.
100%.
Like there's 2 guys that I can honestly say, and, Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson, I don't think he's very good. That's just me. But Cam Coleman is a game breaker type player. Yeah. The 2 guys that I want severely are Malcolm Simmons, who is faster than anybody on our football team, as he showed in the Iron Bowl, where he dusted half of our backfield. And then the linebacker, I can't remember the name off the top of my head. It's like Ardarius or Aquarius, something or another.
Equestrian.
Equestrian. Something Jackson, right? I mean, he was there. That's an All-American linebacker, and I would love to get that guy because we're going to have Deontay Thompson leaving after this year. That's a signal caller that you can bring right in and bring him right up to speed on it. So there's guys all around that roster that anybody would like to have, especially along the defensive front. The front 7 for Auburn, those guys are transferring left and right. They're going to be picked up like this because those boys can play.
I think, really quick, as these thoughts kind of, as we're having this conversation, like thoughts hit my mind that I kind of wanted to touch on, get your thoughts on. I think for Cam Coleman specifically, the Deuce Knight news must have already been in the works, or like circulating amongst the team, which is, probably why we saw him entering the portal yesterday. And then the Deuce Knight, news is a day later. I think about Cam Coleman's perspective, right? You lose continuity over the course of this season when Jackson Arnold gets, basically bumped down to the number 2 spot, and then you bring in your backup quarterback to kind of take over the reins. Forget his name.
Ashton Daniels.
Daniels, that's right. Yeah, so I mean, you lose that continuity, and you start to suffer as a receiver. And as we all know, anybody that watches football passionately knows that wide receivers are the biggest prima donnas on any roster. They want the football every play when they're on offense. So that's probably in large part what led to the decision. And now that Deuce Knight is gone, he's like, I can't deal with this anymore. I want to go to a team where there's one guy who is the guy that is going to get me the ball consistently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's for sure. And I saw a little thing today that A&M and Ohio State were one of the 2 teams that they've picked for Coleman to go to, which would make a lot of sense because you got KC Concepcion leaving from A&M. He's going to be off the payroll. Bring in Cam Coleman. Marcel Reed's going to be your quarterback. Ohio State, Jeremiah Smith's going to the NFL. Julian Sands is going to be your quarterback. You'll get production out of both of those teams.
Yep.
I don't think it would be smart for him to go to Alabama because we're so stacked at receiver right now that we got guys leaving because they don't get their touches. And you don't know who the quarterback's going to be. And that's why you want to go to somebody who's continuity at quarterback. You don't know who it'll be. The 2 choices that he would have there are still pretty good, but you just don't know. But anyways, yeah, I don't know how he puts it together. I mean, he's gonna if he's banking on having half of South Florida's roster coming in, and that's his Louis luggage, as Dion talked about at Colorado. Then, I mean, all the power to him. It tells me that Byron Brown is coming to Auburn because that's why Deuce Knight left, because Byron's going to be
who is a hell of a quarterback, by the way.
He is in his own right. He definitely he 100% is. We've had to play him twice. I said, take him off the schedule. I'm sick of playing these dudes. He's a big physical guy. He can make plays for you. Excuse me. But I don't know who he's throwing to now. I mean, like I say, he's got Perry Thompson there. They're going to probably rely on what Hugh Freeze was able to generate in the cycle, which is, slim to none. But, who knows? He might make something out of he might make a molehill out of dirt. I don't really know. But, I'll, do whatever he wants. But.
I agree with everything you said. I mean, I guess if I'm going to approach this from a glass half full perspective, on behalf of Auburn fans, if I'm going to kind of be in their corner with this take, it's like you lose guys, and that's just the name of the game. You hate to see them go, especially guys that are as talented as a Deuce Knight or a Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons. But Alex Golesh is going to hopefully be able to get guys out of the portal too. To fill those spots. Now, granted, I'm not saying that he's going to be able to replace the productivity or the talent of a Cam Coleman, but I think that what Alex Golesh has going for him is that he's a motivated coach right now. These guys that get these big boy jobs from, a group of 5 team that they came from, they're looking to take that next step. They want to show like, hey, I was worth it, right? Like I was brought into this program for a reason. And so I feel like it probably hurts right now. He's probably feeling like, all right, this is not ideal. This isn't the position I want to be in, but all right, let me adjust. Let's go find some guys that are in the portal. We sell them on Auburn, sell them on, hey, if we're going to bring in Byron Brown, that would be a great connection for you. Talented guy for sure. So we'll wait and see kind of what happens with Auburn over the next couple of weeks, especially once the portal opens up.
I forgot they're going to keep Eric Singleton too. I haven't heard anything about him going to the portal, so that'll be another plus for him. So, anyways, we'll move on. So, playoff games Thursday. We both play on Thursday. Should be a lot of fun. It's going to be great. Thankfully, my game's first. That way I can get it out of the way and just sit back and watch all y'all watch your game, because it's always very entertaining for me, especially when there's 40 of them in the room, right? Watching one guy lose his shit is funny, but watching 40 people just go nuts, whether it's good or bad or whatever, is it's fun. So we'll start with the Rose Bowl. So you got Alabama and number 1 seed Indiana facing off in the, most classic bowl game of them all. Indiana hasn't won a bowl game since 91. The first time that Alabama played in the Rose Bowl was actually against Indiana. And also the first time that Alabama won a Rose Bowl would be 100 years ago come Thursday. So there's a lot of things happening here with, history books or whatever. I was listening to J.D. Piquel this morning on his prediction episode that was from last week. But he said something that, honestly, I was like, wow. So he predicted 31-20 Indiana, which is he's keeping the 7 margin right on the spread because that's what it is, standing today. So that's very surprising. I'm very surprised that he gave 11 points to Indiana because that's a blowout, in my opinion, especially in that type of game or whatever. So I don't see a blowout happening. I did pick Indiana to go to the championship game against Georgia. That's on record. So I'll roll with that pick. But I would not be surprised one bit if the Alabama team that we saw go through the stretch of 5 games and win those games in a pretty pissed off manner show up to Pasadena, which is, I hope, the team that plays on Thursday. And, everybody's talking about Indiana has never been in this position before. They haven't played in a high level, playoff game before. They haven't played in a super high level bowl game before. It's and it's that is significant, right? Because the ebbs and flows emotionally of games like that, especially the week leading up to that game, could also be very taxing. With all the interviews and the hype and all, you just see it all the time and it just gets exhausting. So who knows how they handle it? With Kirk Cignetti being their head coach, they're probably going to handle it the right way. So I'll stick with Indiana beating Alabama. I'll take Indiana to win. I do not take them to cover, though. I'll take them to win by a field goal. If Fernando Mendoza can have the Heisman performances that he's had where he's never turned the ball over this season more than once in a game. He has not had a multi-turnover game all season. If you can continue that and, Indiana run the football and be physical up front the way they were with Ohio State, I think it goes just the way they want it to go. If you're Alabama and you cannot run the football again and Ty Simpson gets sacked 6 times and you get down in the game by, 10 or 13 points or whatever, and there's just nothing that you can do and they're locking you up and the defense is getting to the limit of what they can do for you, then it won't be our day and it won't be very much fun. So run the football if you're Alabama. Keep playing the defense you're playing if you're Indiana. Your front 7 is going to be your best friend. And if you're Fernando Mendoza, don't let the moment get to you. You just did all the Heisman stuff. You won. You beat Ohio State. You're riding high. You're not the underdog in this situation. So how do you handle it? But I'll take Indiana to win by a field goal.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out where I would have the point spread. I would take Indiana as well, just because I do feel like they are a more complete team. I think they're more balanced. I think they're a very physical football team, and Fernando Mendoza can make any throw on the football field. Whether folks choose to believe it or not, I mean, he won the Heisman for a reason.
He's very good.
He's very good. Yeah,
very good.
And their receivers are just as good as anybody in the country. So it's going to be interesting. Obviously, I think we're going to find out how back, and I'm using air quotes there, Alabama is after the SEC championship game, because while, again, credit to them for, righting the ship, so to speak, and getting back on track against Oklahoma, I feel as though Oklahoma kind of has fraud written across their forehead. And so, this is going to be a much different animal because Indiana is the number 1 team in the country for a reason. And it's interesting, you talk about the fact that they've really never been here before. This is going to be brand new to them in a lot of ways. However, I think that last year and that experience was probably the best thing that could have happened to them for this year because it was such a big deal. Like they, had surpassed all expectations last year, couldn't get it done obviously in the playoffs, but it's like, hey, we've got that off of our back now. Now here we go. We've beaten, Oregon on the road. Like we've taken care of business. We won the Big Ten, right? They've had to play really tough teams in order to get to this position. So, I'm sure they're going to be fired up. It's going to be emotional to start the game, but I got to believe that everything that they went through last year is kind of why we're seeing them firing on all cylinders this season. So I don't expect it to be much of a problem at all. I do think that this is going to potentially be a high scoring affair. I kind of feel like it's either a 35-30 game, Indiana, or a 31-24 game. And again, Indiana, I see it either being 5 points or 7 right on the dot. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just feel like Indiana's more complete team. That's why I picked them to win the game.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't have any disagreement with that at all. And they've proved all season that they are, they've lived up to the hype that they've been billed at. And last year they didn't, but this year, that the playoff drumming that they took from Notre Dame was probably conditioned them to be in this kind of situation. So, yeah.
Sam, I got a question for you. How many attempts passing wise do you see Ty Simpson having in the game?
Let's see. He had 28 last week. And then he had, I think, he had 38 against Georgia.
Yep. We'll factor in obviously the fact that they got a pick 6 and then the change of field position with
definitely. And we were trying to bust some clock there at the end. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm thinking he's probably going to hover around 30 to 35, I imagine. I mean, I think 30 to 35 would be about what I would expect because Indiana, along the defensive front, as good as they are the number one team as far as pressures.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe they're the number one team as far as accumulated sacks throughout the year. However, what they are not number one in is yards per carry across the defensive front, which they are giving up 4 yards a carry in that respect. So could we see an opening for us to be able to run the football a little bit more, or at least attempt to run the football a little bit more and put the game in a situation where you grind the clock and you slow it down and keep Mendoza off the field, whether, it doesn't necessarily equate to points or not. It could be. So I think 30 to 35 would be conservative. And I think we'll try to run the ball. I think we're running about 85 plays if we're good at it. So I think 30 to 35 passes, 25 to 30 rushing attempts, however that equals out. I think that's about where we land, somewhere around there. I'd be happy with 28 rushing attempts because if we're running the ball that much, then we're picking up yardage.
Yeah,
because when we don't pick up yardage, we hover like 12 to 14 carries a game if we're not running the football good. So.
And Jam Miller
is
back. Okay, so
correct.
That's another aspect, and I feel like that's another underrated storyline in the game is, how efficient is Jam Miller going to be coming back from, a tough injury, right? It's not like it was, a hangnail. Like
it's an ankle. Yeah, right? It's a foot problem, so it's it's a tender issue, right? But he's had since the Iron Bowl or the fourth quarter of the Iron Bowl to fix it up. And what he brings to the table more or less than his power, aggressive running ability is his catching out of the backfield,
right,
and bailing us out whenever we need short yardage and keep ahead of the sticks on second and medium or whatever. If we take a sack, we can throw a screen pass and get him out there. So, he does a lot more for us than run the ball, which is, everybody talks about the run game with Jam Miller's not in. It's like, well, also the short passing game suffers.
Yeah.
And your check down passing suffers because Kevin Riley's also out. And he was our second best catching back. So Yeah, so we'll see how it goes, man. I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I like everything about Indiana. I hate that we have to play them because as much as I want to beat them, I like Signetti and I like what he brings. So won't hate him after the loss. I won't hold the grudge, but we'll see if the boys show up. So it should be fun. But next game will be the nightcapper, which will be the Sugar Bowl, and it's Georgia Ole Miss in a rematch from October, I believe. Yep. In Athens, where Ole Miss seemingly dominated half of that football game and then were hanging on in the third quarter, and then Georgia took over in the fourth quarter when the defense got their footing up underneath them. And then, Ole Miss had 8 drives in that game, and the first 5 went for scores, and the last 3 went for almost hardly any yardage, and then Georgia was able to pounce on them quick. So I don't see a whole lot changing. I really don't. I think that the Georgia defense has got their footing up underneath them, so that would be the change for me, is that you have a quicker start on defense this year or this time around than you did in October, and Georgia's offense is firing on all cylinders. You don't have Lane Kiffin just coming up with creative shit to hit you on. You do still have Charlie Weiss Jr. still calling plays for you, but the Pete Golding defense, I don't understand why everybody's giving Pete Golding all this credit about, he's got one of the top defenses. Like, dude, I watched it for 3 years. The man does not have a top defense. The shit sucks. Like, we wasted 2 really good defenses on that guy. It's not very good. So once it gets down and you start finding those holes, you can hit it quick. So
drumming Tulane doesn't exactly count. So.
I agree, and I guess that's the confidence that everybody's trying to have in Ole Miss. It's like, they took care of. It's like Tulane. Summerall was 1 foot out the door. He didn't really want to be there. Right. The guys knew they were going to get their shit kicked in. It is what it is. So I don't know. I think the spread's about the same for the Georgia game. I think it's 7 points. I would ride with that 7 points, and I'll give it plus. So I'll take Georgia by 10. I think that they just keep on keeping on with what they've had over the last 4 games and what they did in the SEC championship game. They've had all this time off, and it's a booger giving Kirby this much time to prepare for somebody. So I'll take Georgia and move on to play Ohio State eventually.
Yeah, I feel like I've talked about this before, so I'll probably sound repetitive here. I just feel like, we really gained our footing against Ole Miss. That was kind of the game, especially in that second half where we just turned things around, and I feel like we haven't really looked back, which is great. But yeah, I would expect us to start out much faster defensively. I think Ole Miss is a very talented team. Trinidad Chambliss is a heck of a quarterback. I don't have anything bad to say about Ole Miss. I feel like they've really surpassed expectations this year. How much of a factor is Lane Kiffin not being there on the sideline going to have? I mean, it wasn't a factor against Tulane, but it's a different story. So I expect us to win. The line is 6.5, which I think is about fair, although we beat them by 8 the last time we played them. And that was, like I said, where we gave up 35 points and, we really didn't find ourselves until late in the third and, the fourth quarter. So I expect it to be completely different. Now, I will say this. I do hate all the time off. Saban talks about this all the time. I've heard him say it a bunch recently, when, asked about the playoffs and, you getting a 1 through 4 seed, he's like, look, for when he was at Alabama, right, sometimes we needed that time off, to get healthy, injuries, right, just to rest and get prepared for whoever you have to play. But on the other side, you kind of lose momentum that you've built towards the second half of the season. And that's what we have been over the course of the, second half of this year. Like, we've just turned things around. And I think a lot of people would recognize Georgia as being a really dominant team the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. So I just hope we don't lose any of that momentum. I know Gabe Harris is going to be out, which sucks because he had a great SEC championship game. He's really come on strong the second half of this year. So I hate that, but it's a next man up mentality. I really like where all of our guys have been over the last, again, 4 or 5 games of the year. Ellis Robinson has been a freak in the defensive, secondary. Quintavious Johnson has really emerged. Can't wait to see what he does next year. CJ Allen has really stepped up big time. So, I mean, I have confidence in this defense. I just hope that we can, keep the train rolling.
Yeah, you do. There is a rust factor that happens when you have, 21 days, 24 days off or whatever. It's a really long time, especially, you don't have anybody in between to break it up because you've been practicing against the same people for the last, 290 days or whatever. And you start to, slow down a little bit, so to speak, in the game speed category. You can make practice as physical and as fast as you want to, but it still doesn't equate to game speed and game situations and all that good stuff. So it's a little something to worry about. I think the talent part of it can overcome the rust that would be there if there is any at all. So I mean, I look forward to watching it.
I also don't like playing in New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl.
Sugar Bowl sucks, dude. That's probably the worst bowl of all of them. Yeah. And we've won a national title in the Mercedes Dome over there. So, but I still hate going there because we've got our ass kicked twice in the Sugar Bowl at that place. So it's not a good environment. If you're a coach, that's the worst place that you want to go, unless you're playing a national title game at Allegiant or Alliance Stadium, wherever it is out in Vegas.
Yep.
That would be the second worst place to go because Bourbon Street will get your guys in more trouble than Vegas will, because at least in Vegas, there's a shitload of lights around and there's things to keep them occupied besides fights, alcohol, and women. Yep. So, I don't like going there. I would not like playing there at all. But, we'll see how it goes, man. I think Georgia's going to play well. And, hopefully we both move on and, cap it off with a Happy New Year on a win, So start the year off with a win. We always love to see that.
Absolutely.
Hey, bring her over here for a second. See if she'll talk in the microphone. I'm going to get my daughter real quick. See if she'll talk in the microphone, make her debut. She fussy?
My girl. We're on.
Everybody meet little baby Brooklyn me.
Oh.
Say something. Can you say anything? She's licking the microphone. Can you say hello?
Over the microphone.
Can you say hello? What you gotta say? What you gotta say? Can you say roll tide? Can you say roll tide? Oh, that's a blessing and a half right there. Anyways, y'all, she just got fed, so she's all grunty and gassy and everything else. But anyways, guys, we appreciate y'all. Thanks for following all season. It's been a great year. Hopefully y'all had a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everybody. And, enjoy the games as they come up. And hopefully we'll be back with you next week with, great stories on a win. So love all y'all. Appreciate you. And roll tide.
Go Dogs. Cheers.